What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Evelina Chang, and we are back with another episode of Passion Fruit Podcast. And today I have the amazing Christina Nguyen. What's up, girl? Second date.
I know.
I'm so excited.
I'm nervous.
We had a blind date the first time we ever met, and we just had this electrifying conversation. Yeah. And I was like, Christina, I need you on my pod.
That was like the first time we met.
I know.
I was like, that's how you get a girl.
Yes, I know. Sparks were flying.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to introduce you to the audience. So Christina is a licensed acupuncturist and fertility specialist. She is a second generation integrative medicine practitioner, California state licensed acupuncturist, California state acupuncturist, and herbalist who specializes in women's health, infertility, cosmetic acupuncture, pain management, anxiety, and depression. She graduated from the University of California, Irvine with her undergraduate degree and South Baylo University with a master's degree in acupuncture and oriental medicine. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you. That was a mouthful, but
I
yes,
know,
here I am.
Hey, dude, that's what it takes when you have this many accolades, right?
I
That's
know.
so awesome.
It's only to make our parents proud.
For real.
It's true.
Which is crazy because you told me once before that your family actually focuses in Western medicine.
Yep.
So how did you end up here in Eastern Med?
Oh my God, it was probably the craziest experience because my family is so far, you know how it's like liberal and conservative?
Yeah.
My family is very conservative. They're very Western. I have 4 optometrists in my family, 3 aunties, 1 cousin, internal med everywhere. We have chiropractors. It's crazy. So it doesn't really lend well when you come in and you're like, hi, mom and dad, I'm gonna be a Chinese medicine acupuncturist and Vietnamese acupuncturist.
Yeah,
They literally looked at me like I was crazy.
I bet.
But I've always been the black sheep in my family. So I've always done things like differently. I've always kind of come into the fold being like, hey, like this is what you guys wanna do? You want me to be a doctor and a lawyer? Like I'm gonna go the other direction. But it's one of those things that's fun, you know? So I started, basically when I worked at all their offices. So I worked under an optometry office, dental office, like I worked as a teacher's assistant, teacher's aide. I did everything under the sun. And then I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to do any of this. This seems awful. And I worked under an acupuncture clinic. And I was like, my favorite thing is I love education. I love talking to people, as you can tell.
Totally see that. Yeah.
I love relationships. And then I also love medicine. So the 4 kind of like blended together when I worked under this acupuncture clinic because it's a little bit of everything.
Totally.
You're teaching people how to take care of their bodies, like internally, externally.
Totally.
But then you're also kind of going back old school, right? So you're going to things that like you knew growing up. Like my grandma used to do tokbak, which is kind of like this like herbal tea and soup that they used to make. And they would do cupping back in the day.
Yep.
And coining, you know, with the coin. And it was similar like to gua sha.
Right.
And all these things were so taboo back then because Western medicine was at the height of its prime. And now it's kind of like the opposite. Like Eastern medicine is like growing. Everyone's like, oh, I know what cupping is. I know what gua sha is. I know what facial acupuncture is because it's kind of made this shift. But at the time it was really uncool. Like
It was like a novelty. Like it was just like a myth. Right? In so many ways, it was a myth.
Yes.
And I love what you said about the human connection and building relationships because when I go see my Western doctor at XYZ Medical Group, it's like a quick 10-minute transaction.
Absolutely.
You know, they come in, address the symptom, write a script, out of there, right?
Yeah.
But then when I go and see my acupuncturist or my Eastern doctor, Eastern medicine, she's like getting my pulse. She's all talking to me. She's all talking about the foods that I should eat, the herbs that I should include, how much sleep I should get, you know, what I should exclude in my diet. And it just feels like so much more of a personal experience. And for those that have never seen a Eastern practitioner or ever like dip their toes in it, I highly recommend it because I feel like it's just such a more holistic view.
It's integrative, absolutely.
Totally.
I think it's one of those things too where actually whenever I ask like Asian like people, I'm like, hey, have you done acupuncture? They say no.
Yeah, there's
so
a lot.
50% or more always say no because they always say that their parents did it so they didn't want to.
Right.
So it's almost like their grandparents did it. It was too old school. So then they went the other side, right? Everything's like a pendulum swing. So you swing from one side to the other. Before it was like all OG cupping, all that stuff back in the day, and then it went Western, and now it's kind of like right smack dab in the middle.
Totally.
So when you go to like an acupuncturist or anyone who's in integrative medicine, like it's kind of someone that now knows a little bit of everything. Like I know all the Western diagnoses and all the labs that you should be doing, but I don't run them. Right. I just partner with amazing naturopaths and holistic practitioners who I send my patients to. But at the same time, I'm also looking at the inside, right? I'm like, so tell me about your emotions, your anxiety, your depression. After the pandemic, it was at an all-time high.
All-time high,
which is crazy if you think about it, right? Like, how come the pandemic highlighted this time when everyone was just depressed and on anti-anxiety meds? Because the inside matters, right?
Totally.
So now after the pandemic, everyone's into wellness because they're like, wait, like I wasn't well for 25 years, but the pandemic kind of highlighted that.
For sure. It made everybody slow down and look inside, right? Who are you without all of the extrinsic stimulation, right? Who are you without extrinsic motivation? Who are you when you don't have an office to go into at 9 a.m. and people to socialize with, right?
Absolutely. It was like a stripping away of society, I think, in the way they looked at medicine, the way they looked at ourselves, the way they looked at mental health. Like mental health has never been bigger, right? Like, and then also fertility, right? Like people were either having tons of babies or they were struggling in silence, not being able to have kids during the pandemic.
Okay. Speaking of fertility, because I know that you are a fertility specialist.
Yes, I am.
Walk me through what that is, because as a woman entering my 30s, considering, you know, when to have babies and whatnot, how can you support women that are looking to get
How can I
pregnant?
support you? Absolutely,
exactly.
absolutely. Well, the interesting thing is that with acupuncture, that is like one scope, right? Think of like just a primary care doctor. So that's the level at which an acupuncture is, right? But then once you throw in specialties, for me, I'm a fertility specialist, meaning that I really look at like hormone health, I look at cycle syncing, I look at amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea, like painful periods, I look at, you know, underlying autoimmune issues like PCOS, endometriosis, I look at timing. These are the things that I incorporate into my fertility protocols. So when I look at you, for example, if you were to come in, I wouldn't evaluate you as just someone who's like, oh yeah, like, you know, she has like, you know, her blood work is good, and then now like, let's send her along the way. I look at your tongue, I look at your pulse, I look at what you're eating, intaking. Absolutely, I'll be like, oh, she's a little nervous right now. No, but I mean, I really do. And I ask questions like, what does your period look like? Like, is it fresh red? Is it purple? Is it crampy? Are you having PMS? Are you moody? Is your cycle regular? Irregular? I mean, we all are, right? But those are things that you can actually work on. I think the thing that's so sad about women's health is that we have normalized a lot of the things that are not normal.
Exactly.
Right? Like, we're like, oh, girls should just be PMSy and emotional. Reality, like in Chinese medicine, that's not true. If you are healthy and you are actually like your hormones are good, your chi is flowing, your blood is good, your cortisol is low, right? These things are kind of what make a healthy woman. And now they're just like, oh, it's just normal that women are having, you know, super early periods, people are like infertile, that's normal.
Yeah.
It's not normal.
How do you think that pertains to the female mental load?
Oh my God. Do you have 5 hours to talk about female mental load? Female mental load is interesting too, because when I look at my patients, right? If you look at us, we're in our 30s, we don't have kids yet. So our mental load is like 50%, right? We're trying to set our goals for like, you know, finances, for all these things that we really want, right? But throw in the fact that people want kids or they have kids. They're, you know, we're kind of also in the sandwich generation where our parents are starting to have health issues. And then our friends are having kids, right? So we're kind of in the middle. So being the sandwich generation is really hard because you are now taking on so many things and so many expectations and thinking about above and below. So if you are a female, you're already thinking about like, hey, I'm a female. I have my period like once a month, right? So I'm already kind of at an iron deficiency. I'm operating a little bit lower. Think of just like golf, right? Like if you were to play against your boyfriend, right? Reality, if you're menstruating, you're iron deficient, you're tired, you're fatigued. Physiologically, you're already at a disparity.
True.
Right? But then you throw that in, now throw in kids, throw in work. We're also thinking about work, we're thinking about schedules, we're thinking about our kids and, you know, their daycare, what we're packing, what they're bringing, all those things. It's a lot. It's not linear. So unfortunately for men, everything is a little bit more linear because they don't have the disparity of the female body kind of working against them a little bit. And so for me, I always tell my patients, I'm like, you have to really lock it in and take care of yourself, because if you don't, no one else is going to do it for you.
What does that look like though? What does it look like for somebody who is, you know, a super alpha female that owns 4 different businesses, that wakes up at 5:30 a.m. and doesn't go to sleep until 2 a.m. What does it look like to take care of yourself?
Yeah, that is a great question, because a lot of women, those are my patients. Those are my patients that are coming in now trying to get pregnant at like 32, 35, 38. And they're like, I spent most of my life focusing on my career, focusing on the goals and the things that I have to attain. And now my biological clock kind of turned on. And it's like, excuse you, men don't have that. Like, they don't have just a clock that turns on. They're just like going and doing, right? They look at kids and they're like, okay, that's cool. But there is something about women that there is something that you look at a baby and all of a sudden it changes, right? So when you were talking about that ability to take care of yourself, you have to start early. I'm teaching my patients at like 15, 16, like who are bringing their kids in. I'm like, let's take a look at monitoring your cycle. I teach them, I'm like, how do you regulate your cycle? Let's look at your follicular stage, your menstrual stage, your ovulatory stage, and your luteal. My 16-year-old girls, I will tell you, they come in, they're like, I'm on cycle day 3, I'm on my period, I'm bleeding, I'm feeling a little iron deficient, I'm kind of tired, I'm having kind of like symptoms. Or they'll come in, they'll be like, I'm luteal, like I think I'm about to start my period, I have hot flashes, I feel like a little bit temperamental. I'm like, cool. That's great. So you are aware, right? It starts with awareness.
Self-awareness is key.
You have to start with that. And I think that's the problem. A lot of women ignore the self-awareness part. They ignore the part that screams at them from the inside.
They don't know what it is.
They're like, just keep going, right? Because that's like the male model.
Yeah,
in
literally.
society. Just keep going.
Just follow that,
Absolutely.
right? Men can push through.
So we can do it too.
Right. But we have to. It's forced that way though, right? Because if he can show up to work 365, I need to in order to maintain my place at the table.
I had a patient who literally came in and she was like, there was no maternity leave at my office. I got pregnant and I had to fight for it.
Dude, I'm literally wondering like how the fuck I'm gonna do it. I run my own business.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It is, and we have to think about that. Men don't have to think about that as much because the reality is that they don't have 9 months where their bodies aren't functioning at the optimal capacity. Right. And that's something that when I tell my patients about the female mental load and how to take care of yourself, start with small steps, right? Like how can you meditate? How can you learn breath work? How can you slow down in the busyness, right? Like take one less meeting so that you can go for a walk outside. It sounds so dumb. And for people who are like type A like us, who are like, we've got schedules, we got things to do.
I got time blocks.
Yeah, I got time blocks. But you literally have to time block yourself, like 10 minutes in between this time and this time to shut the fuck up and slow down, right? And to actually really lean into what your body's asking you to. If you don't, what ends up happening is you are my patients at 42 who hit walls and are having like breakdowns, like midlife crises, who've gotten to this point and they are so unaware of their own bodies and what they actually wanted. And I have women who come to me and they're like, is it too late for me to have kids? Like I spent so much of my life hustling and grinding so I can keep up with the average Joe next to me. And now I can't have kids, but this guy can have kids whenever he wants.
Right.
It's a scary thing to think about.
Yeah, it's a scary reality.
I know because that was me too.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think about kids until I'm 35 now, right? And I'm turning 36 and most of my life I specialized in women's health and helping women get pregnant, but I was like, the urge hasn't kicked in for me yet, so I don't need to have kids. It's fine. I can help people have kids the rest of my life. And then one day, I swear to you, Lena, I woke up and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I think I want kids because I saw this one baby that like turned my like mind around.
Yeah.
You know, like there's certain moments where you realize.
Yep.
For me, it was like a Twilight come to Jesus moment.
Get it.
Like I saw this one baby and I just was like,
I want one.
My ovaries like twitched. I was like,
yes.
And it's not like I meant it to, right? Like
yes.
if it had, and I kept saying like if it had happened earlier, I would have obviously frozen my eggs early. I would have done all this stuff early, but again, I'm a fertility acupuncturist and it didn't even happen to me until now, right?
Right.
So imagine all the other women who are not in this field, who don't have the resources,
right? And
they're figuring this out at 40 and they're like, shit, who do I call? What do I do?
It's too late, yeah.
It's too late.
Right.
The reality is it's not too late. We have so many resources, right?
Totally.
But I think there is something inside of us that's so fearful that it's going to be too late. Right. For someone who's like a type A hustler.
Totally.
It's scary.
It's very scary. And so talking about freezing your eggs, my cousin, when I turned 27, I was living in New York at the time, she sat me down and she was like, hey, it's time. It's time to freeze your eggs. And I looked at her and I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And she's like, Evelina, you are approaching 30, you are in your late 20s. You need to consider this because the earlier you do it, the better your eggs and the higher chances of quote unquote survival.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, because it is survival.
It
not
is.
A guarantee.
It's not a guarantee, right?
Yeah.
So walk me through it. What finally inspired you to go do it?
Yeah.
And how was that process?
Oh my gosh, it was so crazy because I work in the fertility world. I have like reproductive endocrinologists on my phone.
On speed
right?
dial.
I could literally call them at any given moment.
Yeah.
And they have been bugging me since I was 22. They're like, are you gonna do it now? Are you gonna do it now? I even had people poach me for my eggs. They were like, you're 23, your eggs would cost, like you would get paid $10,000. Asians don't give anything away, right? So we don't give away anything. So they're like, Asian eggs are even more rare.
Correct. No, literally.
They are. And at the time I was like, no, because I don't like giving anything away.
Right. I don't want to have my babies out there in the ether and I don't know. I don't know, right?
But then for me, I really finally sat down and was like, you know what? I did at 35. It was only like 4 months ago that I decided to do it. And I was like, you know what? I think it's time to really think about this. What does future Christina want? You know, I have the urge right now, but in 2 years, it might not be an urge. It might be a freaking scream, right? It might be like, I need this now, and if I can't have it, someone's gonna die. Because because we're like goal getters, right? You know, it's true. Someone's gonna die. Give me a baby.
Right.
And so I was telling my girlfriends, I literally finally called one of my good friends, and I was like, hey girl, it's time. She was like, okay, cool, next week. Booked my appointment, got in, bypassed the wait list, literally went to one of my favorite reproductive endocrinologists in Irvine, and she just was like, all right, I've been waiting for you, like, let's go. And so the process is interesting because everyone says it's like a 2-week process just to freeze your eggs. But for me, as an acupuncturist, and especially in fertility, it's so much longer.
Because you have to prep. You have to prep your body. Yeah.
I look at it like a marathon. Like, you're not gonna wake up one day and be like, I'm gonna run a half marathon. I mean, some people do because they're crazy, but like, that's not me. I like to prep. And so I teach this to my patients, I teach this to myself, and I took 3 months of like no alcohol, no, processed carbs, no gluten, no dairy. I like really went in. And then I also took supplements like a good quality CoQ10, a high quality prenatal, not the Target stuff because that stuff is trash, right? Like I'm really big on just like high quality skincare, high quality supplements is also really important. So I did that, and I really just went in on like low impact exercise, which is so opposite also of what society teaches us, right? Spin every day, high intensity workouts.
Get your heart rate up.
Yeah, always. And I actually was like, you know what? Low impact is actually better. So I ended up switching my workouts to more steady state cardio. I did 30-minute walks twice a day. I did low impact workouts. I did yoga. I switched to Pilates, and my body felt so good. The process is that once you start adding the hormones in, you're bloated as fuck.
Right.
Like, let's just be really honest.
Right.
My patients, I always saw them and I saw how bloated they got, but when I experienced it myself, I was like, oh girl, it's different. It's like your stomach also feels like a watermelon is in there, but it's hard. So you're like poking at it.
Oh my gosh.
Because your follicles are, depending on the range of follicles that you have.
Right.
I had 3 friends, all the same age, doing it at different times, okay? One of my friends had 2 follicles, okay? Meaning that her AMH and her quality and her likelihood of getting pregnant is much lower.
Yeah.
I'm average, very textbook, I had like 10. And I had another girlfriend who was like the high achiever. She had like 25.
Oh my God.
All the same age, all best friends, all doing it at the same time, not on purpose.
Right.
So we called each other, we had a text message group and we're like, yo, so like, tell me about your eggs, what's going on? And it's so crazy how all of us were all so different, even though we were going through the same process. So that's when I was like, oh shoot, like it's really important to really educate everyone on going in and doing their like wellness checkups. And so I did all that. I did blood work. I made sure everything was good. I'm very average. Like for an Asian, it sounds terrible. It was not the best. I was like, what do you mean I'm average? Don't I have 15 eggs for my age? And my doctor was like, no girl, you're like 10. That's like, for 35, 10 is great, right? And so I was like, okay, fine.
It is. 10 is great.
10 is great.
Yeah.
And so, luckily like I'm blessed with 10. So to me, I'm like, thank you God. Like, thank you. That is like something that I'm very happy that I froze 10. But the medications were a 2-week process. And then at the very end, you're on follicle stimulating hormones that make you kind of moody, hot flashy. Luckily I have acupuncture, so I was able to kind of acupuncture myself during the time. I put myself on my own protocol.
Got it.
So I acupuncture myself at least twice a week on the lower abdomen channels to kind of help with bloating, cramping, digestion, and also like mental health.
Oh my gosh, I need to come see you.
I know. I was crying like every day, and not in a way where I was crying because I was upset that I had to do this. I was crying because there is a disparity for women. We have to think about this stuff. I dropped $7,000 to $10,000 on this by myself.
Just to do this, yeah.
And what am I gonna do? Venmo my husband later and be like, hey, I froze my eggs for our future.
Right.
That I thought about before you met me.
That's right.
Right?
Venmo me half.
You can't.
You cannot, yeah.
So women have to think about this stuff early. You have to think about your fertility more so than a man.
Right.
Because the tangent, men also can have low sperm quality and can have issues as well too. But for a female, you have to think about it a little bit more. I remember I was in the sauna because, I was trying to like detox and like get all the bloating down. I was just like, this is so unfair that we have to do this.
It is so unfair.
It's unfair.
Men don't have to deal with morning sickness. Men don't have to deal with the emotions.
No.
PMS, they don't have to be fatigued. None of it.
And it's like, it's sad because like you don't want to complain about it, right? Because you're like, I'm a boss ass bitch. I don't complain, But at the same time, I'm like, I'm fucking bleeding. And I'm trying to do all these things that you're doing. Can you do that? No.
For real. No. And then also, if you're like a woman that's scared to ask for help, or just like you don't normally ask for help, like what do? Just swallow it all and just do it?
I don't know. That's the hard part, right?
I know. So like, how do you date and find somebody who deals with your alpha?
That's so hard. I think it's hard because as someone who's an alpha female who can do a lot of things, I have to learn when to step back. I have to learn when to let someone pay. I have to learn when to let someone take care of me. I had a patient who was a provider. She was like, providers need to marry providers or people that are caretakers, because people like us will give until we have nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like until there's nothing left. And if we have nothing left, who's gonna sweep in and
Literally.
like come and take care of us, right? So that's the part that I remember when I was listening to it. I was like, now going forward, I really wanna date someone who's a provider. Not financially necessarily, but someone who can emotionally step in.
Correct.
At the end of the day, after my mental load, like seeing X amount of patients a day, taking care of them, like I need someone to be like, hey, like how's your day? Like,
exactly.
What can I do for you? Like, how can I care for you in a way that serves you, not because I have to, but because I want to.
Exactly. And like you said, it doesn't have to be financial,
No.
right? Because in so many ways, us as alpha females, we can provide for ourselves. We were taught to do that,
Absolutely.
right? It just has to
like
be
Bills by
Exactly.
Destiny's Child. Like that's what we were listening to growing up.
Exactly.
And
in so many ways, I need somebody that can make me feel safe at home, that makes me decompress just by talking to that person.
Absolutely.
Right? But it's so hard to find the right match when you know that you can just take care of yourself, right?
I always joke with my girlfriends. I'm like, y'all boss ass bitches, if I were lesbian, this would be great. Like, we would just have this, like, power couple, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, there is something to be said about learning how to be more vulnerable, learning how to ask for help, learning how to really step into that feminine energy, right? As an acupuncturist, you learn so much about yin and yang and balance and things like that. And unfortunately, it's been skewed.
Yeah.
Like, because we are an Americanized society. But I think that's our job now, right? To like unlearn these things that our parents taught us how to do, right? Like they taught us how to be independent and strong and all these things, but for our benefit, right? But there's pros and cons to everything. Like independent, strong women need help too.
Exactly. At some point in time, my alpha was a diminishing return in my relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No,
Yes.
seriously.
Yes.
Like I had to learn how to be a beta at home. Not even a beta, but just like let my man lead.
Yeah.
Because I can only do so much. And if I'm out here saving the world in my 9 to 5 or my 5 to 2 a.m. Like I need somebody to hold it down at home, right?
Like, can you just feed me?
Yeah,
I'm hungry.
that's it.
I know.
Please.
I know.
Please just feed me.
I know. And it's not like, I think that's the thing too that I think I've also noticed with women in trying to get pregnant, right? Like the fertility world, and women just want to do everything, and when they can't, it creates this like disparity and this like depression and anxiety that is so deep rooted because we have tried so hard to just be everything. And that failure is so terrifying, right? To be in a space where you don't feel like you're good enough or you don't feel like you can do it all. But that's the whole balance of yin and yang. Like someone's supposed to help you, your community, your family, your friends. It doesn't even have to be a significant other, right? If it is, awesome. But like the community is also supposed to build you up as well too. We can't do anything alone.
How do you find community?
Community is so hard to find these days. I think because when I talk to my patients, zoom out, everything's so singular now, right? We're talking nuclear family. Back in Asia, it was like we were in huts with like 30,000 aunties and uncles, right? And I'm blessed that I have a huge family.
It's like collectivism societies.
Yes. I have a huge family. We're Vietnamese, right? Like culturally, are you Vietnamese?
Taiwanese.
He's still second date.
Yeah.
So Taiwanese. So it's like we have big Asian families that are really communal, right? Like sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Like aunties are coming over left and right, like kind of sometimes too much in your business, but you're not alone.
Never.
So that's the thing, right? But when you're having kids, when you're being isolated, all that stuff, like the nuclear family sometimes does it by themselves. I have so many families who are like, my family's not here.
Yeah.
I'm doing it all by myself. And then that's when I'm like, you know what? Community is so important. You have to pour into the people around you.
Totally.
And also your interests, right? Like you love golf, so you're gonna find your community here. I love fertility and wellness, so I'm gonna look for my people in the fitness world, in the wellness world, people that care about deep conversations and, lifting each other up. Like that's what I'm looking for. And so that's how I find my community.
I think that's amazing. And I think that's something to really take away is that like, if you stick to your guns of what you know about yourself, your passions, the things that you love to do, your community will kind of form around you organically.
Yeah, because you're kind of looking for what you are looking for in yourself.
Totally.
As well, right? Someone's looking for you too.
Totally.
Like someone's looking for a boss-ass bitch that's gonna gas them up, right? Like that's
Facts.
That's true. Like, and I think there have been so many people that I've met where they were like, I was waiting for you.
Aww.
And I was like,
I was waiting for you.
Yeah, I was like, what did you do waiting for me? And they were like, no, I was like manifesting like a friend that like pulled through that had knowledge about fertility. And I was like, you know, or like someone who wanted to learn more about like side hustles and things that were fun and interesting, someone who wanted to learn, you know, and I think if you are always curious and you're always learning, not just about subjects, but about people, that's where you build community. Like the biggest thing like about community is just being interested in what someone else has to say.
It's so true.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that not enough people acknowledge that and put themselves in positions to share their own vulnerabilities and their own interests, right? Everything is so surface level these days.
Ugh,
like,
I hate it.
People that dig deep and go deep are definitely my type of people.
Yes.
And definitely the type of people that I connect with the most.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to know if your day's just good.
Yeah.
Like, when my patients come in and they're like, oh, how's your day? Good. I'm like, good? Look, like, let's just good? Yeah. And they're like, actually.
Exactly.
Da-da-da-da-da.
There's so much more, right?
Yeah.
Nothing in life is chalked up with one word.
No.
Yeah.
And the human experience is that it's so much deeper than there's layers to everyone. It just depends on how much people hide it, how much they're willing to like expose it, how much they're willing to talk about it. And if you're in the right community with the right people, you'll be safe to talk about it, which is what I want my patients to feel when they walk in. My goal when people come in is I want you to have a good time. I want you to be able to like let loose, but also be honest about where you're at. If you feel bad, we'll get you through that bad day, you know? But if you feel good, then we'll make that good day better, right? That's kind of the space that I want. And when it comes to fertility, it's such a vulnerable space as a woman to say, like, I can't have kids. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, I don't feel good enough. Like, it's almost a hit to your identity.
Totally.
And so being able to support people and say, like, it's not, your identity and worth is not in this child. It's in you. It's in the universe. It's in God. It's in your community. It's in whatever outside of you. And then when you have a baby, it'll just be a blessing, you know?
Totally. What are some of the misconceptions of Eastern medicine?
That's actually a really good question. So a lot of people actually think Eastern medicine and acupuncture is woo-woo, right? So if you think of acupuncture, what do you picture? An old Asian man that's like poking you.
Literally.
Who can't speak English.
Right.
And some of my patients have gone to these people, totally fine, in Asia, whatever. But the reality is that it's actually much more integrative now. I work at Hoag Hospital, right? There are acupuncturists now in reproductive endocrinology offices, frontline and center, doing IVF and IUI transfers or IVF transfers. So we are actually much more holistic now than you think. It's not just all crystals and gems and like energy, which a part of it is because Eastern medicine is founded in Buddhist and Taoist beliefs that the mind and body are connected, right? But I will say it's not as esoteric as people think it is now. It's really effective in pain management with my, you know, a lot of my friends who are actually physical therapists now do dry needling. What's dry needling? Dry needling is acupuncture.
Literally.
Without the woo-woo, like without the, oh my gosh, like the spiritual energy piece of it. But in my head, I'm like, why would you take that out? Like our bodies are both mind and body, right? So
mind,
why
body,
would you?
soul.
Yeah, why would you take that out? So I think there are components now when people look at acupuncture, they're looking at it much more integratively. But in the past, people used to think I was a witch doctor. So, but it's okay. I'll let them think that until I prove them wrong.
Awesome. Yeah. So what would you recommend to somebody who maybe has like this misconception? Would you recommend them to just come see you? Fuck it, come see me.
Yeah.
Learn more.
I think actually, so for me, whenever I'm looking for someone who's good and qualified, I look at one, word of mouth, right? Like ask people around because people will always give you their honest opinion. And then two, also just kind of doing your own research. You know, looking online, looking at TikToks, Instagram, and just seeing what they have. Sometimes it's scary, but you need to know the extremes to everything, right? When you're going into something, you want to know the highs and lows of everything. And also, if you're going to look within your community. Usually, I always ask for referrals. So if I go to a physical therapist that I like or internal medicine doctor that I like, I ask them if they have integrative, you know, referrals. And most of the time they do because most of the people that get referred to me from Hoag are through the Hoag network.
Makes sense.
I have never had to market myself at Hoag. It's literally like we offer acupuncture now for these things, for fertility, for women's health, for pain management, anxiety, and people are like flocking because they're like, wait, oh my gosh.
This is available?
This is available. And you will not even believe how many people have come up to me and they go, I went to see you at Hoag because I know you're legit.
I love that.
And I was like, Oh, I guess like working under a Hoag umbrella means that you definitely have, you know, the credibility.
For sure.
For it, because it's something that now has been approved by Western medicine. You know, so
and I think that's huge. And I think that Western medicine taking on some of these Eastern methodologies is going to really open the eyes of Americans across the world.
And it's so good for our patients, right? Like all of our patients now are kind of like, okay, cool. Like I have a ton of neuropathy patients for like from chemotherapy and radiation and things, and they're like, I don't want to take more medication.
Right.
My stomach can't handle it. So they're like, let's come in and do a treatment, 3 sessions, and they're like, oh my God, my neuropathy went from 100% to like 60% to now 40%. I can walk, my feet aren't burning, and I didn't have to take anything.
That's amazing.
Okay, perfect. It's better for your doctors, it's better for me, better for you.
Totally.
So absolutely.
Doing God's work, sis.
Yes, love it.